exclusive interview with the Epoch Times American thought leaders, Mike Pompeo says President Trump helped change the world's new view of the Chinese Communist Party, and there's no going back.
For years, Chinese dissidents have been sounding alarm bells in the U.S. and around the world about the Chinese Communist Party, its grave human rights violations, and the nature of the regime.
We looked past them. We had other challenges. We were involved in a very serious counterterrorism campaign, appropriately so, and we took our eye off this enormous threat. And now it's now upon us. It's now inside the gates. The Chinese Communist Party is here in America. And
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told the Epoch Times' Yanya Kellick that the CCP's influence is now inside the American government, research institutions, and schools.
For a long time, America's leaders denied that this was taking place, so I think people couldn't see it or feel it, or their leaders were telling them, no, it's okay if they steal millions of jobs from people in Kansas or Iowa or, who invented something, or they steal some technology invented in the Silicon Valley or in the Boston corridor. American leaders said, that's okay, we're going to go make a pretty penny. Don't worry.
He said President Donald Trump understood the failure of the 50 years engagement policy from the outset. His administration fundamentally changed the American stance on China.
And the Trump administration has begun in every dimension to turn the ship in the right direction to get America to once again do the right thing and protect itself from this communist threat in China.
Before being elected, Trump's TV career often featured comments on China.
I said that China is taking advantage and abusing us. They are taking tremendous numbers of our jobs. They're making our products. We are rebuilding China.
He has described the Trump administration's China policy as distrust and verify, compared to Ronald Reagan's Soviet Union policy of trust but verify.
Every experience I've had in my 6 years as a member of Congress and now 4 years serving in the Trump administration would suggest that anything but distrusting anything that comes from the Chinese Communist Party is folly. They've broken promise after promise after promise, not just promises to the United States, promises to the world, promises to the people of Hong Kong, promises to their own people in mainland China, a promise to President Obama that says they wouldn't militarize the South China Sea. Time after time after time. The Chinese Communist Party promises that if they have a virus problem that they'll disclose it. The list is endless. They still, to this day, haven't allowed the World Health Organization to begin its investigation of where this virus emanated from, and yet they promised they would.
He said there is no going back to the past China policies.
President Trump recognized that when he began his campaign, and then when he took office. We've now changed fundamentally how I think the West looks at China, not just the United States. Even when you look at Europe and Australia and Southeast Asia, they know too. They know that the Chinese Communist Party is up to no good, and they see it plainly, and so I'm confident that this pressure that is now on the Chinese Communist Party is real, and not just because leaders are demanding it, because people all across the world can see it. The true face of the Chinese Communist Party has been exposed.
Americans' distrust of mass media has reached a record high. 33% of those polled by Gallup saying they have no confidence at all in the media. And that's in contrast to Democrats' increasing levels of trust in the media. Gallup reports that Republican confidence in the media has plummeted, while Democratic Party supporters' trust in the media has risen dramatically. Democrats' trust over the preceding 4 years has been among the highest Gallup has measured for any party in the past 2 decades. The partisan divide over the reliability of the media swelled to a record 63 points. A mere 10% of Republicans surveyed said they had a great deal or fair amount of trust in the media, compared to 73% of Democrats. The massive gap between supporters of the two parties is the largest Gallup has recorded since it started asking respondents the question in the 1970s. It survived the Great Fire of London in 1666 and the bombings of World War I and World War II. Let's take a closer look at one of the oldest churches in London. Our UK correspondent Jane Werrell reports.
This church tells the story of this little part of London in the way that nothing else really can do it. It tells a religious story, it tells a historical story, it tells the story of the people who've lived and worshipped and worked around here.
It all started about 900 years ago with a man called Rahir, or courtier of King Henry I. This is his tomb. An old book, The Foundation of St. Bartholomew, says Rahir was a bit of a creep, and he made his way through noble families to get to the court, but things changed after disaster struck.
When he was in the court, he was on the ship that didn't sink, alongside the ship that did sink, that killed the king's son, the White Ship disaster. And that seemed to trigger in him a total re-evaluation of his life.
As documented in these murals, Rahir set off on a pilgrimage to Rome, but once there he contracted a fever. He vowed that if he recovered he would set up a hospital for the poor in London. After he returned to health, those prayers were answered.
He had a vision of St. Bartholomew who said, go back to London and build a hospital and a church there. And so he did.
Both were founded in 1123 and parts of the original structures still remain. Early on it was graced with a visit from the Virgin Mary.
When the Virgin Mary came in the 1180s, she came and visited Canon Hubert, who was at his prayers, and according to him, she told him that he was doing perfectly well, but all the other monks needed to work a lot harder, and that they weren't praying quite hard enough and they needed to buck up their act.
The church and hospital were very closely connected.
The monks of the priory, which is another name really for a monastery, ran the hospital, and the medicines would have come from the garden, the garden in the priory, and the doctors and nurses and so on would have been the monks who were serving from the priory.
More than 400 years later, during the dissolution of the monasteries, the priory was suppressed. A powerful politician, Richard Rich, knocked down 2/3 of it, and the hospital was given over to the City of London. Richard Rich also built this gatehouse above the arch, but we can only see these Tudor timbers today because a German Zeppelin bomb landed in front of the building in World War I. It knocked down the wall plastered there during the Georgian era, and the building narrowly escaped destruction in World War II.
And we survived the Blitz because my predecessor, my wartime predecessor, Rector Wallbank, went up to the roof every single night and kicked off the incendiary bombs. And his wife, who died aged 102, told me that he was terrified of heights. But he went up every night.
It's also a survivor of the Great Fire of London in 1666 that destroyed most other churches in London. About 60 years on from the fire in 1725, another special visitor came here, one of the founding fathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin. He worked here as a typesetter during the years when the Lady Chapel was secularized as a printer's shop. The church was restored in the 1800s and early 1900s. In recent years, the rector says the congregation has been growing. Now measures are in place to socially distance since the pandemic.
For the entire world, there's been a remembrance that the world life is a lot more complex and a lot less controllable than we thought. And it's reminded the entire world that all of their plans can just be blown straight out of the water in a moment. It's that old joke, what makes God laugh? Humans making plans.
These stones have absorbed hundreds of years of prayers and still stand to witness the next page of history. Jane Worrell, NTG News, London.
People in Russia are preparing for the Year of the Bull in 2021. Some who live there prefer to follow the Chinese lunar calendar instead of the Gregorian, at least when it comes to New Year celebrations.
In one Russian region, excitement is rising around 2021's next year's symbol, the ox. According to Asian tradition, the ox is a hard-working animal, and 2021 will reward those who redouble their efforts to achieve their goals. As part of the celebrations here, bull-shaped figurines are bought in advance. That's because prices are driven up as it gets closer to the Lunar New Year.
Why a little bull? Because we are about to end this wonderful 2020, and 2021 will be the year of the white metal bull, and I hope it will bring us a little more joy than the year ending did.
The largest factory in Russia began producing souvenir cows and bulls back in autumn, and is gradually increasing production volumes. It takes 3 days to make a figurine. In souvenir shops and Christmas markets, there's a wide selection of them. The cheapest sells for around $7, while the average-sized bull goes for about $35. It's now considered trendy to place bull figurines underneath the Christmas tree. That's along with the traditional Father Frost and Snow Maiden. But it's not all about the toys. Real cows are also being prepared for the holiday.
We hope that in the year of the bull there will be happiness for us and our cows, that we will milk even more milk, which is what we wish for everyone.
Some cows are even headed for the runway this summer to participate in livestock beauty contests. One farm is already preparing. The chosen cows are specially dressed and given extra attention. The farm decided that this year 3 cows will be sent to the contest, aiming for one of them to become the champion and bring happiness to its owners in the year of the ox.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider. Thank you for watching. See you next time.